The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Morning, everybody. A belated happy new year to you all. I hope you've all had a good first half term back 2022. Before we make a start on today's webinar, I just wanted to remind you about our community portal. You should all have login details for this. You can access it directly from your Oliver system. I think it's the SoftLink support icon on your management screen. If you don't have login details for this, do drop a member of our support team an email and they'll sort one out for you. All of our webinars are saved on there, and there's also lots of other help guides, discussion groups, training videos, varying in length from kind of like 30-second how to issue a book to, over hour-long stock taking videos. The webinars delivered by the team in Australia are also accessible from the community portal, so you can see what those guys are up to. Russell McGrath, the trainer in Australia, delivered a few webinars for patch 50, new features webinar, for patch 53 just before the new year, and that's available on the portal. I'll also pop the link to this on the follow-up email to this session. We've got quite a few new names registered for today's webinar, so I just wanted to welcome those of you who haven't attended before, along with a big hello to some of you, our more regular attendees. My name is Sarah Billany, and I am the Customer Community Manager here at SoftLink in the UK. I spend a large part of my time delivering training, which is great because I get to speak to lots of you. I'm a librarian myself, and my last position before moving to SoftLink was in a secondary school in East Yorkshire. I've been with SoftLink for just under 3 years, so it's not too long ago that I was in a library post. However, I haven't been through COVID in your shoes, so I do send huge amounts of tea and sympathy for all you guys have coped with over the past couple of years. I try to keep my webinars as short as is practical to do so. This one's scheduled for 30 minutes. There are a few handouts on the GoToWebinar panel, along with a certificate of attendance, so do feel free to grab those. I also really welcome questions, but I tend to respond to most of those on a one-to-one basis after the session. So you'll see that automatically you're muted with the session, but there's a question box. Feel free to say hello, ask any questions that pop up, and I will drop you an email after the session if you raise anything in there. This session, along with all the other webinars we deliver, is recorded, and it will be put up onto the community portal in a couple of days. It will go under the Learn tab. There is a heading just for UK webinars, so they're all kept under there. I also prepare a Padlet to accompany these sessions, which has the handouts on, some other recordings and other information I think you might find helpful, just all pulled together in one place. The details for this can be seen on the screen. Don't worry if you don't have anything to jot this down. If you experience technical difficulties or are called away to help a student, that kind of thing, as all the links will be emailed out to you along with a recording of this session in a couple of days. Okay. Actually, would some of you mind just dropping a hello in the question box, just so I can make sure that you guys can hear me okay? Oh, yay. Okay. Fantastic. Thanks, guys. Appreciate that. Okay, so moving on to today's topic, which is the Stocktake. Now, my session today is relatively short, and my aim is to give you tips on how to get started and navigate around the Stocktake area of Oliver. Basically, come away knowing how to set up your Stocktake and crack on with it. We do have a couple of other webinars available about the Stocktake. One of our more recent ones, which is broken down into 3 short recordings, I've popped onto the Padlet. But there's also ones on the community portal, one delivered by Susan Gann and one delivered by Rhonda Poacher, who are fantastic trainers and really knowledgeable. So do seek those out as well if you want to. I personally sometimes find it helpful to watch things through a few times. Different presenters highlight different things, so it can be useful to dip into others. But hopefully those of you looking for a quick overview to get you started and just get on with it, you'll find what you need in today's session. Now, there are some prerequisites to fulfill before you start a Stocktake. Now, the thought of prerequisites often is a little bit off-putting to people, but they're really, I promise you, they're not onerous at all, and they just help to ensure everything runs smoothly for you. So I've just listed them on the screen there. Most of you will be familiar with the areas mentioned. The first thing you need to do really is just to make sure you're on the latest version of Oliver. The latest version available to you guys is 8.054, so patch 54. You can check that on the management about section, so what version you are on at the moment. The next thing you need to do is just make sure that parameter 2033 is set to no if you're not using Library of Congress classification in your library. Now, most schools I work with, that I've spoken to, they rarely use Library of Congress. It tends to be more university libraries that we come across that are using the Library of Congress classification. So for most of you, you will be setting parameter 2033 to no. And then the final 2 things you need to do are both in the housekeeping area of Oliver. So that's under system and housekeeping. You can edit the housekeeping area, and you just need to make sure you've got a tick in the update copies derived field and a tick in the Stocktake finalization process. You need to do all this really at least the day before you start your Stocktake. Once you've done that, you are good to go. So I'm just going to open up my Oliver system now. Move a few windows around. Okay. So hopefully you guys will all be able to see my Oliver there. Now, once you've taken care of your prerequisites, before you set up your Stocktake, I would have a think about what you are going to Stocktake. Are you going to do the whole library, or are you just going to do one branch or just a few collections within a particular branch? Now, when we're talking about branches and collections in doing a Stocktake, we're being very specific there in that we're talking about the branches you have set up on your system. So under system and branches, any branches you have will be listed in here. And when we're talking about collections, we're talking about the collections under management and collections here. Okay, so any collections you've got will be listed there. When you click on a collection, it will tell you the usage. So when you click on that, it will take you to the copies that are in that collection. So when I'm talking about branches and collections in relation to stock taking, I'm being very specific and talking about those sections that you've set up in those areas there. Okay. Once you've kind of had a thought that through and decided what areas you are going to stock take, then you can think about setting it up in your Stocktake area on Oliver. Once you've started a stock take, there is no set time limit for finishing it, but we do advise trying to complete it as soon as you can. Don't let it be something that drags on for months and months and months. So start your stock take when you're ready, when you've got that window of time to just get on and complete the area that you're wanting to stock take. You can certainly circulate books while stock taking, so you can issue and return books to your heart's content, but we wouldn't recommend cataloguing new stock or weeding during the process of a stock take. Okay, so issue and return books as much as you need to, but try not to add new stock or remove stock during the stock take process. Okay, so let's have a look at the stock take area. So to start a stock take, you would go to cataloging and stock take just here. Okay, and this is the stock take area with an Oliver. Now here you will see any previous stock takes that have maybe taken place. So that's what's happening here. These are previous stock takes. We can see that the one from 2017 here hasn't been finalised. If you go in by clicking on the little number, we can see that not much progress was made with this stock take, in that we can see that you've got quite a lot of unscanned books still in various sections, this one particularly here. Okay. This stock take could be deleted. Okay, so you could click on that number and delete that stock take. There. You wouldn't want to finalise a stock take. So if you go into this area and you can see that people have sort of previously started stock takes and then not finished them, as in they haven't finalised them, do not finalise them at this stage. So finalising is basically the final part of the stock take. There will be a button called finalise that you will press. And what happens at that point is that any books that haven't been scanned into the stock take become marked as missing. So if I press the finalise button of that stock take now, any of those unscanned books would be marked as missing, but I can tell that it wasn't really completed, that perhaps somebody started it and didn't finish it, so you don't want that to happen. When you set up a new stock take, you can use a previous stock take almost as a template. So you can go in just like we did and have a look and see if any of the previous stock takes match what you're wanting to stock take this time around. Alternatively, you can create a new one. So if stock taking is something you do regularly and you like to run comparison reports year on year, it can be really helpful to set your stock take up in the same way each year. So you'll be using the same template each year so that you're comparing like for like figures. For example, the 2015 stock take, if we just have a look at that, looks at all the collections in the junior school. So I can see here I've got various sections set up from the junior school branch and the collections within the junior school. So when I go to set up a new stock take, I could choose to use the setup of the 2015 stock take for my new one. That doesn't mean that I can't then add additional collections to this stock take if I've created new collections, for example, since the previous stock take took place, but it would mean I would only need to add one collection rather than have to set up a stock take for each collection I have. So this approach is really designed to save you time once you get into a regular stock take routine. However, it might be that you're doing a stock take for the first time or you want to start afresh from previous stock takes. So when you go to create a new stock take, which you do by pressing this create new button here, start a new stock take button just there. Just move this window out of the way. So I'm going to press that now. You can see you get the option to choose previous stock takes, the format of previous stock takes as how you would then create this one. Or you can just leave that blank. Give your Stocktake a name. So I'm going to call this webinar test 2022 and just press add, and that will allow you to create a completely new Stocktake without any kind of previous template section set up, and it will allow you to create a new one from scratch. So I'm going to do that by pressing add here. Okay. And this creates our Stocktake details screen. Before you can start your Stocktake, you have to add the sections. So in the example we just saw, we had various sections set up for the collections in the junior library. So how many sections you add here depends on what you plan to Stocktake and how you want to move forward with it. So technically, if you plan to close your library and Stocktake everything, you could simply add one section. So we could add a section here. You could leave all of these fields blank and press save, and then the system would then assume that you're going to Stocktake absolutely everything that you have catalogued on your system. However, if for the sake of reporting and perhaps a more methodical approach, you might want to create a section for individual branches, collections, or even narrow it down to classification range. Being able to narrow down a Stocktake by collection and classification range will be dependent on how thoroughly copies have been classified and how relevant your collections are. If these are areas that have perhaps been a little neglected, then it may be a case of having to Stocktake the whole library if you're not able to accurately, choose collections here or break down by classification there. So you guys would need to assess your individual setups before making a decision here. Just bear in mind that what you choose in here is what the system will be expecting you to scan in to that section. So I'm just going to set up two sections. I'm going to set up them for my senior branch, and I am going to choose the senior non-fiction. And I'm not going to break it down by classification range. I'm going to Stocktake the entire senior non-fiction collection. So I'm going to press save. There. So if I press Stocktake here, it will take me back to that overview screen, and I can add another section. So again, I'm going to choose my senior branch, and this time I'm going to choose my senior fiction collection and press save. Go back to my overview screen there. So you can see I now have a Stocktake set up that is designed to Stocktake the senior fiction collection and the senior non-fiction collection. So those are the only two collections that I have catalogued on my system that this Stocktake will be expecting me to deal with at this point. Now, initially, the figures here in your Stocktake will be set to 0 here until you start to press what we call the process button. So if I go into my senior fiction section here, you can see you have this process button, which I will press. You will be asked, did you scan in shelf order? I would really advise selecting no here, as otherwise you'll be given a message to deal with to correct for every book that you scan out of order. So I'm going to press no here. Now, once this process is finished, it shouldn't take too long. You can see that these numbers have changed. Okay, so it'll tell me how many books I currently have to scan into this section. So I've got 482 copies that it's expecting me to scan into this section. How many are currently off shelf? So off shelf basically means books that are currently out on loan. any books that are off shelf are considered to be seen by the Stocktake. So you're not expected to bring them back and scan them into the Stocktake. It will automatically assume that you have those books because they're actually out on loan. Misshelves means that the item is incorrect for the branch or collection or classification range that has been chosen for this section. Or if you specified that you scanned in shelf order, when you press the process button, any books that are shelved out of order would display here. Again, I really wouldn't recommend answering yes to that, as it could potentially bring up lots of misshelved items. I would only answer yes to this if you're really sure everything's been scanned in order and you want to reshelve anything that's out of order during the Stocktake. Missing dispersed means items that have a status of missing or dispersed or have been weeded since the previous Stocktake. Now you can press that process button for a section as often as you like, and it will simply keep checking the section against the catalogue in its current state. You can click on the headings. So if I clicked on off shelf there to see what books are in these sections, and then clicking on the Stocktake button takes you back to your main Stocktake screen there. Your aim is to scan in as many of the unscanned items as possible. You will have noticed that after I clicked that process button, this finalise button appeared. Now that is a button that you treat with more caution. The process button you can press willy-nilly, the finalise button not so much. You don't want to finalise anything until you are satisfied that as many of the unscanned books for your sections have been scanned in as possible, basically. As once you finalise, then any unscanned items will be marked as missing. So that's the very final stage that completes your Stocktake process, basically. As I've said, you can, however, click the process button as often as you like. And this will just keep you updating the figures for the different copies until you're satisfied you've scanned in as many items as you can for that section. Now you've got two options for scanning items into a section. You can scan them directly into the Stocktake. So if I just go back to the Stocktake screen there, so you click on the section that you're working on and you would choose scan barcodes here. Okay. If you tick this auto return button, the system will automatically return any items that have been shelved without being returned in circulation desk. So, for example, I've experienced this quite a lot where you've got lovely students who think they're being really helpful and they bring the book back and they just take it and put it straight back on the shelf because they're saving you a job, but obviously it hasn't been returned at the issue desk. So the status of that book is on loan when really it should be available. So that will pick those books up as you scan them into the Stocktake and then just automatically return them there. So I would definitely make sure that is ticked. As you scan your barcodes from your section into here, you'll receive messages as and when's necessary. Mostly you should be getting the message shelved okay, which basically means the book is in the correct section for the Stocktake, and you just move on to the next item. And you continue that with all of the books in your section. If you choose to navigate away from this page, for example, to perhaps do something else in the Stocktake or to look at a copy record, maybe you've got a message that's popped up to say that the item's misshelved and you're thinking, oh, it's not misshelved. So you want to go to the copy record and make sure that the book is actually in the correct collection on the copy record. If you want to navigate away from this page, always press this finish button here. It's not a disaster if you don't, but what will happen is you'll be locked out of the Stocktake for 15 minutes. So if you press that finish button, it just ensures that you don't get locked out. Although if you're looking for an excuse to go make a cup of tea, that's quite a good one. Um, as you scan in items, you might be notified, as I say, if you've scanned an item into the wrong section. So here you can choose to either go and scan the item into the correct section, and then when you process, your figures will be updated. Or if the item is catalogued incorrectly and should actually be in the branch or collection, that section is set up to Stocktake, you can navigate away from the page after pressing the finish button, find the copy, update the collection, then head back to the Stocktake and continue. So don't feel like you can't move around Oliver while you're in the middle of doing your Stocktake. If anything, you're going to be in and out issuing books to the kids if you're still open, that kind of thing, or updating copy records if these items are in the wrong place, that kind of thing. Now, the other method for scanning copies into a section is to import them from a plain text file. So you can see you've got an import barcodes option there, and that basically will allow you to upload a plain text file. So you might be wheeling a laptop around the library and scanning your barcodes into a plain text file, or you might have one of those tiny portable scanners that store barcodes as you scan and then allows you to download a text file that you can import. It has to be a plain text file like Notepad, so not something like Word. And you'd then be able to import that file using that import barcodes option. The downside to this method is you don't get to tackle any messages that pop up regarding particular copies as you go, so you'd need to tackle them all after the event. So I think this really is personal preference as to what you choose to do here, and also perhaps, tied to what equipment you have available to you. I must admit, most people I speak to about this tend to be kind of just wheeling a trolley at a time over to the desk and scanning those in there. Now, once you've finished scanning everything you possibly can into the Stocktake, you can return to your main screen, and from here you can process all. So you could process all your sections in one go. If everything has been scanned into the correct section and all of your unscanned items can definitely not be located, I would then advise running your Stocktake summary reports here. So there are various report options there available to you. I would run these before finalising just to have a look and make sure you're happy with the figures. So if you are expected to produce some sort of report to print off and have on file, do it before you finalise. And then if anything looks odd, or you think, oh, actually, I really should try and find some more of those unscanned books, you haven't kind of committed anything to the database at this point. Once you are comfortable that you've scanned in everything you possibly can into your sections and that the reports look okay, that is when you would finalise the Stocktake. So if I pressed process all at this point, the finalise button would appear here. Alternatively, when you're in individual sections, once you've pressed process, the finalise button again will appear, so you can finalise it as a section at a time if that's your preference. Finalisation is resource intensive, so it will happen overnight. So it won't happen straight away. It will happen overnight. Providing you've ticked that prerequisite Stocktake finalisation process area in your housekeeping. So that's why you tick that there. Right, I'm just going to very quickly have a look at the questions, guys. And make sure there's nothing there that's going to be. Oh yeah, so somebody's asked about using students to help scan into the Stocktake. Can more than one person scan items into the Stocktake at the same time? Yes, absolutely. You can have, multiple people scanning into the same Stocktake at the same time, if that's going to help you there. So you don't need to worry if that's something you're wanting to do. Right, let me get my presentation back on the screen. So basically, to summarise your Stocktake process, the first thing you would be doing is your prerequisites. They will literally take you 5 minutes. Make sure you do that a day or two before you're ready to do your Stocktake. So do your prerequisites. Have a think about what you are going to Stocktake. Okay, be clear about that before you set your Stocktake up. Next section, set up your Stocktake with as many sections as you want. Those are the sections that you will be scanning, obviously, your copies into. Scanning your barcodes and keep processing to update your numbers as you're Stocktaking. Okay. Scanning as many barcodes as you possibly can for all sections you've set up. Once you're sure you've scanned in as many barcodes as you can and that you've dealt with any messages that have popped up, you can then run some summary reports. Okay. Once you've done that, process all for a final time, check over your reports, and then your final step will be to finalise. So you can either do that a section at a time, or you can finalise all after processing all from that main screen. The finalisation process will run overnight, and this will mark any unscanned books as missing on your catalogue. Let me just quickly scan the questions, guys, and see if there's anything else that's going to be helpful to you. Yep, you can download error reports. So somebody's asked if you use the import feature, can you download an error report afterwards to check errors on certain books? You can do that, yep. And can you create new locations for items to be scanned into, for example, shelf locations instead of collections? Unfortunately, that's not something you can do. So you can only identify the things that you want to scan in terms of either branch, collections, or classification. Okay. And you can run a missing report. So that would be, I guess, after you have, you could either go and view the missing items from your Stocktake itself and run a report from there, or if you mean after you've finalised the Stocktake, from your cataloguing and copy screen, you would be able to search for any items that have the status of missing and run reports on those. There is a way you can create a search to basically identify items that were marked as missing on that particular Stocktake rather than just any item that was marked as missing. It's quite a long search string, but if anybody wants that, let me know and I'll send that over to you. Or it is detailed on the sort of optional after Stocktake things that you can do. There's a little recording about that on the Padlet that I'm going to send out to you guys. Yep, no problem. I will send that over to you. Suzanne, thanks for your question there. So, I hope that's helped to demystify some of the Stocktake process for you all. It's one of those things that it's relatively straightforward. It's just time consuming. And I think that is something that can be off-putting for all of us. It's just, finding the time to do this job, and I guess it doesn't matter whether you're kind of going to do it with an import or whether you're going to do it shelf by shelf, bringing them up to the desk. There's still no getting away from the fact you've got to scan all of those books one by one in some way. So So yes, I appreciate it. It's not the most fun task that we get to do. Um, so our next webinar is scheduled for the 5th of April. And we'll be looking at something a little bit lighter. So we'll be looking at genres and book reviews for those of you who want to know a little bit more about how to use these aspects of Oliver. It will be suitable for those of you using Oliver Junior too. So do register if that's of interest to you. Um, don't forget, if you can't attend, register anyway, and we will email out the recording to you afterwards. Do drop me an email if you have any queries. I will be in touch with anyone who raised a question today, just with a bit more information. Thank you so much, as always, for taking the time to come in person. It's really nice that you guys are here. I wish you all a great week. And for those of you heading off into half term, have a well-deserved rest.